Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just been to see Pillion.
Yes.
I was say we've just been to see it. I've just been to see it with Jen.
You saw it
a couple of days ago? Sunday?
I forget. Yeah, kind of.
It's Thursday now.
Sometime on the weekend when you couldn't make it, I think.
Yeah, you went to see it. You already were missing it. So we've seen it separately, but we're meeting up to see it today. It's a romantic comedy drama is what Wikipedia says. I mean, I would say it's probably heavier on the drama. And it's about a young guy who gets involved in a BDSM relationship when he's very new to it. I felt out of my depth for a lot of it.
I was wondering how you'd feel.
But I cried at the end.
Really?
Yeah. So I cried in the cinema, and then we just went to Five Guys to get a bite before we came around here, and I cried worse in Five Guys.
God. How lovely. What made you cry?
Because, we'll get into, it'll be a sort of spoiler, but it's a happy ending,
yes.
Right? So, the story is about this young guy, Colin, who we see at the start he's nervous, he's young, he clearly, he's gay, but he never seems to have had much of a relationship before. He's been set up on a blind date with a guy by his mum. His parents are very supportive. He lives with them, but the
parents are so wonderful in this movie.
Yeah. But he sees this guy at the bar, who is this the Alexander Skarsgård. I should say, by the way, Colin's played by Harry Melling, who I don't think I'd ever seen before.
I've seen him. It's a face that you recognize. Yeah, I think he's in the Harry Potter films.
Oh, sure.
It's a face that you recognize. But I think this is the first time I've seen him in a major role.
Well, I didn't think I recognised him. Maybe I have seen him before. But he seemed quite new to me. And Ray is played by Alexander Skarsgård. Every couple of weeks they seem to come out with a new Skarsgård brother. And they're all very good. So he sees Ray at the pub. Ray is tall, handsome, blonde, a biker,
fit.
Clearly, from his... very fit. But also kind of standoffish. But Ray... makes a kind of, a standoffish introduction. And it's an introduction that's made by way of making him do something. So Ray comes to the bar when Colin's there, gets 3 packs of crisps, but puts the money in front of Colin, makes Colin pay for it, makes Colin give him the crisps, and that's going to be the tone of their relationship. And so it's very clear that Colin is new to all of this, and consent never comes up. At the very most, it's implicit.
Yes.
And the question is kind of...
It's more than implicit, really. Yeah. It's almost like Colin is desperate for that relationship.
Yes.
Yes, he's the one who asks for the phone number. He's the one that keeps returning. Yeah, kind of, he's the one that asks. Though, of course, during the course of the film, you realize that he's getting a lot of what he wants, but not what he really wants, and he learns to ask for it at the end.
Right.
Yeah,
so this
gets it from someone.
So
else.
This is what moves me. Is this is where we'll kind of come into, I guess, spoiler territory because we're talking about the events of the film. But through a lot of the film, at first it's all very new to him, and as the relationship becomes kind of established, I start thinking to myself, how happy is he? Does he like this as much as he says he does, or seems to show on his face? Because sometimes he also shows that he's not necessarily enjoying this, or he's not happy with something Ray has done. And I'm going, I was sort of thinking, why doesn't he leave at some points? But you're thinking, well, if this is a controlling, abusive relationship, people don't leave those. They don't feel able to. If it's that,
it's not that.
But these are the questions that I'm asking of myself.
Sure.
So when he then eventually speaks up for himself and actually acts up for himself as well, and he takes Ray's bike and rides off. The bike is the most important thing to Ray, and he steals it and he goes for a joyride. I mean, I should say the title Pillion is about the second seat on the bike. That's riding Pillion. So the idea is he is the submissive, the second seat. He takes the first seat at that time. He drives off. That's where I'm thinking, right, this resolves a lot of these questions that I have. Like, no, he's not that happy, and it's resolving it for me, and it's resolving it for him as well, that he's able to act in a way that is speaking up for himself.
Sure, but I mean, let's not ignore the other part, because I think, he is submissive, it's what he gets off on, right? Like, you know, there's definitely kind of agreements and little tests,
Yes.
yeah, on all of those things, right? So I think part of and he finds community and joy, yeah, and in sexual fulfillment for sure, right? But all those bits with the bikers when, you know, for his birthday and so on, yeah, you get a sense of he's part of a community in a way that before he seemed very lonely.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
So for me,
it moves him out of his parents' house, and you know,
yes.
So yeah.
And yet, kind of what you find is, however handsome and, you know, domineering, and obviously, you know, all those things that turn him on about Alex Skarsgård, it's not enough because, you know, what he needs is affection.
Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of what he's not getting.
And it's kind of, it seems very practiced by Ray that he doesn't give that.
Yes.
Because what you end up with towards the end of the film is this day off scene. So basically, Ray has kind of been a bit nice to Colin for his birthday, and that kind of emboldens Colin, I think, to ask for a little bit more. He lets him sleep in his bed. That's the big thing. He's slept on the rug the whole time. Yeah. And he lets him sleep in the bed, and then he asks, "Well, could I sleep in the bed again? Could I sleep maybe once a week? Could I have a day off once a week, and we do something else?" And you know, kind of, there's a moment of kind of high drama, and eventually it's resolved by Ray agreeing, "Let's have this day off. Then I'll make you breakfast instead of you cooking for me all the time, and we'll go and have this day out. Where do you want to go?" And the whole scene where they go to the shopping centre and they go around and he sings for the two ladies and stuff. I'm thinking, is Ray having a real try at this? Or is he kind of taking the piss out of Colin a little bit? Because this is not his thing at all.
I didn't think he was taking the piss.
And, well, I think ultimately definitely resolves that he's not taking the piss, because what happens is they kiss, which has been a big thing. They haven't kissed. And then it gets all too much for Ray. And Ray responds by completely absconding. That's the last you see of him.
Yes.
Leaves.
Which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, because I think the film really illustrates, to me, very, very well, you know, this contrast between, you know, fantasy life, sexual fulfillment, yeah, and then kind of the ins and outs of kind of relationship. Because, you know, I mean, I remember I was kind of into skinheads for a while, and, you know, I was surprised at how nice they were. And I was talking to a friend and I said, well, you know, why are you surprised? You know, like, everybody just wants love. Like, you know, everybody's just, like, ordinary, and everybody wants love. Yeah, kind of, you know, so kind of why is that so surprising? And, of course, it's because of that self-presentation of self. Yeah, and also, I suppose, you know, a self-presentation of particular sexual proclivities, which makes it sound quite hard, you know. And I think what you get in this is a picture of someone who's really kind of seeking love and affection.
Yeah.
And the other person who's scared of that and masking it through, you know, a kind of a sexual role play is kind of an ideal facade for masking kind of feeling. As soon as it gets a bit intimate, he flees. He literally moves house. Right?
Yeah, not just a sexual role play, but just role play, a power dynamic role play throughout his whole life. It's not always sexual. It's about, you'll do this for me. You'll do, yeah. Every morning he leaves a list of things.
That's part of the sexual fantasy.
Sure, but it's all but outside of a strictly sexual context, it's a constant in their life.
What we don't see is how Ray behaves with the rest of his friends.
No.
Yeah, like, I'm sure if he's at work and he tells somebody, do this for me and do that for me, people will say, fuck off. Right? Like, I mean, it is only in a sexual relationship that dominance can be asserted and controlled, yeah, in that way, because it's consented to in a way that in other areas of life it isn't. But also, it can't be constant. And certainly kind of, you know, I thought what was interesting about the film, at least kind of in terms of my knowledge and experience, is often when you have kind of, you know, S&M-y couples, yeah, that you're familiar with, it's like in the quotidian, in the everyday, they're super affectionate, right? And then the sex thing is a kind of role play, right? Whereas this, it seemed kind of the role play was like constant.
It's everything. But I think this is where, so, you know, again, we were having a little chat in Five Guys, and one thing that came up is the idea that this is not a good example, or say the film is good, but it's showing a bad example of a relationship like this. It is unhealthy. Like I say, they don't talk about consent as openly as they really should. And
I don't agree with that, because there's a whole series of points of consent.
There are points, and like I say, it's implicit to some extent, but it should be
nobody's forcing him to be there. And in fact, Ray keeps kind of pushing him aside, right? Like, yeah, he says, "Can I call you?" Doesn't answer, right? Like,
well, Ray is the one who's getting everything that he wants.
No, sorry, Colin is the one who's pursuing the relationship,
right,
through most of the film, and every time he's pursuing it, it's a consent. Yeah.
Where he's asking for it, but it's everything ultimately ends up to Ray, and this is where I think it's also important that this is Colin's first time having this kind of relationship. This is why the ending made me cry, because he has learned what his boundaries are, and understands how to set them.
Yes,
it really made me cry. It's going to make me cry again. You get on, was it Bumble or Tinder or whatever the app is, and he writes down, "I need 1 day off a week. That's non-negotiable."
Yes.
Because what he's learned about himself is that he is submissive, and he does get off on this.
Yes.
Because it wasn't. I don't think it's clear to him from the very start. This is up to him. This is something that he loves. Once it starts, clearly that's a huge attraction. He immediately figures out, "Oh, I quite like this."
Yes.
But he also eventually figures out, "I have a limit, and this is where that limit needs to be." And when he finds someone who will engage with that limit, it's a really happy ending.
Yes. Yes. Though it's interesting because the limit is one of affection and emotion, and it's not of sexual practices.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was great. For me, the great achievement of the film is tone.
Yeah.
Because kind of what you're seeing in a way is quite hard, right? Like, kind of sleep on the floor like a dog. And the only sex we really see is a blowjob, really, in an alleyway. I imagine kind of.
We also see him. He gets Colin on his back for his birthday at the picnic the day.
Yeah. But that's
Which depends what you mean by see. That is an enacted sex scene.
I'm just saying that's actually really comparatively tame to what you imagine.
Sure.
Yeah, that kind of they're doing behind closed doors, right?
Okay.
So all you're seeing is kind of largely the role play of dominance, really. Mm. You imagine that there's other kinds of sexual practices that you're not seeing, that they're both enjoying very much, which is why they pursue it, right? And so the only thing that's missing is a kind of an affective bond, a caring, or an expression of a caring for one another, which actually Ray never shows.
Well, this is why I think, this is why I say this is an example of a relationship that is not an example of this kind of relationship, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
This relationship can be better in this way, and Ray in particular is the one who's holding it back from being healthy.
Yes.
Because Colin is crying out for these things, and Ray is not providing them, and he won't even talk about them.
Yeah,
it's just no. And for him, the role play is constant. It's 100% every single day, every moment of every day. He gets to be in charge of everything. There's no cool down. There's no sense of affection.
Yeah. And also, it's kind of. I wish we'd known more about him, right? Because he's got that tattoo on his stomach. Yes.
On his chest, his dog's names.
Or are they his dog's names?
Well, there were 3 names, and the third one was the name of his dog, I believe. So the other 2 must be his previous dogs.
Because I wondered, are they, the names of his children?
Rosie, I think it was. I'm sure that's one of the tattoos, and that's his dog. So I'm sure that's his dog's names.
Possibly, yeah.
Which is everything about people's dress and the way they look and everything that they do has so much symbolic intent in this film. That's one of them. His dogs are close to him. His dogs are above his boyfriend.
Yes.
Right? He won't hang up his boyfriend's coat. He's not his boyfriend at the time when you first see him. He hangs up his own leather jacket. He won't hang up his boyfriend, just drops it on the floor. It's quite obvious. I'm not saying it's subtle, but everything has this symbolic intent saying these are what the dynamics are here. One thing that I really like about the film is that despite the fact it is about a gay community, a gay relationship, it almost doesn't need to be gay.
No, it doesn't.
Right? So, like, if the film were about a heterosexual couple, the dynamics would be a little bit different.
Yes.
But not that different.
No, that's true. Except there are specific cultural things, obviously, about, the bikers and the biker gangs.
Yeah, so, like, that is a particular subculture.
It's a particular subculture,
and I think
yes.
BDSM sort of aesthetics and practices have a particular relationship with kind of gay leather community. But again, it's not exclusive to that. It's just the film is about that. And the thing with the parents, they never, there's no issue at all with him being gay. They are, from the moment we see them, supportive parents. They're setting him up on dates. They love him. Dad's a bit awkward, but that's one of those things. But like, there's no point in the film where you're going like, oh, this is like telling me something about gay people. This is like a gay stereotype, something like all that kind of thing.
I mean, the parents are worried that they think their son is being taken advantage of, or not being appreciated enough, or I mean, obviously, parents want what's best for their children, and here's a person who is absolutely doing nothing but making their child pay and work.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So
it feels really true, that dinner scene where the mum says, "Who are you?" and calls him a cunt, and he's like, she sees through this guy a bit.
Well, I'm not sure that she does, because I think he also has the point that she shouldn't meddle and it's none of her business.
He does have a point about that. It's where he says something like, "It's not for you to understand necessarily," which I understand. I get that, but she is picking up on something.
Well, she is picking up on something that the son eventually realizes that, kind of. So I think the interesting thing about the film is that the son discovers sex. Yeah, clearly the whole thing is a turn on for him, and it's a fulfillment for him. And kind of Ray is the mechanism through which he finds both sexual fulfillment and community and a kind of identity, really. Yeah, so actually, Ray is a good thing for him, right? But it is a stepping stone to something else, i.e., that on top of that, he also wants somebody to share life with, and somebody to love, and somebody who loves them. Yeah. Right? And kind of those are things that Ray is unwilling to do.
That's it. And he learns what he won't get from Ray, and he learns what he will
wants.
have to ask for himself. Exactly.
Yeah. But I thought it was all kind of, because when I went to see the film, I thought, oh, it's all going to be like, quite hard, and, and by hard, I mean not just that, there'll be like kinky sexuality or whatever, but also a kind of a hard look on it, right? And in fact, the film is like super sweet. It is almost like a kind of a romantic comedy, really. Yeah, like,
I think it definitely. I would say it's not quite. I would be. It's definitely got the capacity to shock people.
Well, depending on what shocked you. I mean, I found it showed almost nothing, really.
Yeah.
So I...
like a general, but it's 18 rated.
Sure.
Which you see all too rarely these days.
Sure.
And so it...
it has a flash of penis.
So like a general audience will, find things...
That it has less penis than you see on Netflix.
Well, I was reading about, various cuts of the film. One thing was the director, what's his name? Harry Lighton, who, by the way, first-time director, first-time feature.
Amazing. I did know that.
I didn't know this guy. He made a short film in 2017 called Wren Boys, and that was BAFTA nominated for Best Short Film. So he has previous, but I had no idea this was first-time feature. Like, he was so assured, the direction. Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about, the control of tone, is that's what direction for me ultimately comes down to. It how you control the tone of your film, and it's beautifully controlled.
The tone is amazing. And the actors are amazing, actually. So I think those are two triumphs in the film.
Yeah.
Because it's got a really small cast, but the parents are wonderful, and particularly the mom, actually. We should name...
Yes.
Yeah, because she's a very well-known actress. I've seen her in films and TV.
Yeah, Leslie Sharp. And Douglas Hodge is the dad.
Yeah. They are superb.
Yeah.
Right? As are the two leads, right? So to get those performances from a first-time director, that are amazing. And then the way that, the film is showing you these quite hard things, and kind of then making you chuckle. Really, so there's always a chuckle under the surface. Really, I think.
Well, I said the reason I mentioned the director's sense, we were talking about kind of the level of explicitness in the film, and he was saying that there were various different cuts, and that some elements were more explicit. And he said there was one where there was like a huge close-up of a cock, right front on
a big screen.
That's what he said. He said, you see it on a big screen, you go, actually, I should cut this. So
anyway, I also, I loved the depiction of the biker community, right, and their trips and their.
You can tell the research that's been done.
Yes, and
I think that they're mostly real.
Yeah. No, I think they are. Yeah. I think I read that somewhere as well. Anyway, so I loved all of that. And also, is it Harry Melling, the guy who plays?
Yes, Colin.
Yes, he's got such a weird face. That is so kind of endearing, right? And also, I loved that he sings in a barbershop quartet with his dad, right? And it's like so sweet and so naff and so on. And then you think, yes, and this is kind of combined, right, with like these sexual desires, that are kind of, quite hard-edged and part of a particular kink community, right? So I loved seeing that combination.
Yeah.
And of course, I thought Alex Skarsgård is fantastic as that remote, unfeeling. Yeah, it's just like you feel, well, kind of, if you look like that, you don't even have to act the part. You just do nothing.
I might mention that when we had a quick chat after the film, Jen and I, Jen said, the thing is, for a lot of the film, he kind of doesn't have to do very much. It's about being standoffish and stoic and just staying away. But that moment when they kiss and he lets himself be open emotionally to Colin, you see these changes in his face, and you see him realizing that this is all too much. And it's a really good point. Like that moment that he comes alive in a way that he hasn't the rest of the film, and that's when everything changes for him. Yeah. You see it in Alexander Skarsgård's performance. It's just on his face.
And it's interesting because you see all the other relationships in the biker gang, right? And they're very affectionate, right? Like kind of,
yeah.
And they're talking about how do you know you're a couple with someone and blah 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 blah, right? And so it's clear that even within the forms of that community, Skarsgård can't give of himself at all. That's kind of. He has to be kind of remote and this and that. It makes you think, what happened to him?
Well, it's actually quite weird when you see everyone's round at his house, because you do think like he's the guy who shows up quietly, as opposed to the guy who hosts. It doesn't feel right for him.
Yes.
But there you go. I mean, I was surprised. It made me cry at the end because I wasn't thinking it would the whole way through.
Yeah. So what exactly made you cry?
Well, like I say, it was that he figures himself out a little bit and is able to stand up for himself, and find someone he will be able to make a better go of this with. And it's lovely. And what I think is really remarkable, the fact that it affected me the way it did, is that it's not doing it through heightened emotional cues. It's not doing it through music. I don't think it plays music at that point. It's not doing it through kind of a dramatic camera angle or something like that, or building. It's done it because it's told its story beautifully, and I've bought it completely, and I get it. I mean, I thought it was a really remarkable achievement.
Wonderful. Here I thought maybe, Jen was bashing you around and you realised.
No. It was all me. Because she didn't realise, she went to, film ended and she went to the loo, and I just sat there sort of like on the edge of tears.
Yes.
And then when we were chatting about it in Five Guys, and I said, this is why I like the ending, it all just came out.
Yeah, no, I can understand. I can imagine it having that effect on people, because it is about that thing of valuing yourself. Yeah. Right, and finding out what you want, and asking for it. Right, and everybody, and it feels like such a simple thing to ask, but everybody wants love, right, and everybody deserves it, really.
Well, this is why I think the film is so good as well, because I think despite the fact it is about this subculture and a type of relationship that most people find extremely weird, it is completely legible. You do get it, and you get why it's good for him for Ray to have left at the end, and that he's able to establish his boundaries. You get it's all completely legible. You completely get it, even for I think a general audience that has no kind of intimate knowledge of this kind of thing.
Yes,
you understand it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I imagine that's why it's received the release that it has.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of it's an art house release, but it's a mainstream release, right? We see it at Cineworld, right?
Because I think a problem that people who do know BDSM relationships and problem that they tend to have with stories about them is that they don't understand them well. That is to say, the stories don't understand the community well enough to be portraying it.
Well,
so that was the big problem that a lot of people in that lifestyle had with 50 Shades of Grey, because it was just pure fan fiction. I kind of have a slightly different take on it, because I think the fantasy element of 50 Shades of Grey, I think, buys you a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily need to be realistic, but that's another story.
Yes.
It was something that people thought, if people are actually supposed to be learning that this is what this kind of relationship is like, they are learning it from someone who doesn't know anything about it. In this case, I think it's doing a much better job of expressing what those relationships are like and what might be good or bad about them.
I don't know.
And how you can handle them well or badly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, always kind of suspicious, really, because, sex is the one thing that almost nobody's honest about. So, yeah. I mean, I think kind of, even in terms of the world that you see in Pillion, which is based on an Adam Marsh Jones novel, I believe, based on his life, right? But when you talk about kind of sex, people have so much shame and so much embarrassment, and also kind of so much, stuff that they want to project. So much not just fantasy, but self-fantasy, right? That it's kind of, you feel that kind of you're maneuvering, kind of getting a real sense, by kind of trying to interpret different things that you don't quite believe in a way. Well, that's me. Maybe I'm just an old skeptic, right? But I think kind of it's one of those things that, that people lie most about. And sometimes, unwittingly or unknown, kind of, sometimes it's things they wish to believe, or, or sometimes it's understandably they don't want to, kind of speak about it in kind of particular ways. But I thought the film was kind of, relatively, what's the word? It mapped onto kind of my knowledge and understanding and expectations of the world that it represented, and on those ways of behavior, and managed to be really sweet.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'd say when it comes to talking about the question of is it a healthy relationship that's represented and what are the issues around consent, is that in no point does it never talks about it in terms of, or never raises questions of it in terms of this is what should or should not be done in such a relationship. People this is why I'm saying people who criticize works that represent BDSM kind of subcultures will talk about this was good and this was bad, this is what should be done, this is what shouldn't be done. I've done a little bit of that today. But what the film is doing is framing everything in terms of what does this character need? How does he feel? So, because it could be that, you come to an agreement that is non-traditional even within BDSM, if that's right for you. This is about what do these characters need, ultimately. Which is why, and so ultimately, the character Colin realizes he needs something more, and he's not getting it.
Yes. I mean, so kind of, when you read about SM, and again, people say, oh, yeah, you have these discussions, and you make these agreements, and you consent or don't consent, and people say, oh, well, the bottom always has kind of the ultimate power because they're the ones who consent or not. But in my experience, I mean, kind of, especially in sexual relationship, it's not like you're drawing out a contract for your next mortgage, right? So kind of things get intimated,
Yes,
and
yeah.
you know, it started and maybe stopped, and you know, it's never like a clear cut thing that you discuss as if it were a legal kind of document, right? It's like, and you see that in the film, yeah.
We see it, certainly see that's the way it works here, although it can work like that. And I think as time goes on, I think people are more and more in. I wasn't saying systems. Sometimes it can be, but people, the idea that you can be more explicit about these things, or should be more explicit about things, is becoming more accepted. But I mean, I would say, for instance, that you're right to say that there's nothing in this film that's anything close to a rape scene. There's nothing like that. Like, everything here is consensual. Everything here is at most something that Colin is not used to and is experiencing for the first time, and is open to trying, and like I say, he tries things and finds his boundaries.
Yes, but actually, I think what's most interesting about the film is that the boundaries are not sexual.
Yes.
Like, you know, that you get a real sense that he's really quite into doing quite extreme things. And actually he says something, I have a very high pain tolerance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of one of his virtues, you know, when he's putting the announcement, right? So, but what he's asking for is, affection.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
so, and I like that. And I think like this thing about negotiation or non-negotiation, I mean, it's so interesting because it happens in all relationships, right? Or all the relationships I've been in, right? You know, and some kind of, you have overt discussion, you know, how do we pay the rent together? Or, you know, how much does each contribute to the mortgage? Or, you know, you do the cleaning one week, I'll do the cleaning the other. Yeah, and then some things you never talk about or you never negotiate and become kind of aspects of resentment, right? You know, so I think that thing of not a clashing of wills, but of just two individual kind of consciousnesses, really kind of trying to connect whilst also setting up boundaries, is it cuts across kinds of relationships, really.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a basis for all of them. They'll probably manifesting themselves very differently, and I think the film, you know, demonstrates that really beautifully. I laughed a lot. I didn't cry, but I found it moving. Yeah, and you know, it was so lovely when, you know, that moment of self-actualization that he gets at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I love to. I mean, I've been a bit down on the kind of comedy aspect. But to me, the dramatic aspect felt richer, more embodied. The comedy, in other words, the kind of the idea that it's a comedy drama, to me, puts comedy on. Says that it has more of a role, I think, than it does in the film. But it is there, and it does lighten.
It's funny and sweet, right? And who would have thought that an S&M biker movie would end up being funny and sweet?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I loved it.
Yeah, I loved it too. I thought it was brilliant.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.